And we can go live with the pre-show. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the N10-008 Network Plus Study Group, our very first 008 Network Plus Study Group. We've made the transition. We've moved off into the newer exam. There will be a little bit of overlap, obviously, because there's overlap in the exam objectives. But in the meantime, we will focus on 008 content. Hello, everybody. Hello, chat room. If you're tuning in on the replay, welcome as well. We've got all Network Plus Q&A for you in this first hour. And then I will take questions from the chat room in the second hour. We got plenty to do. Let's see if I can get my headphones. Oh, that sounds so much better. I can hear myself. Hello, downtown Houston. Christoph is taking the 007 tomorrow. My fingers are crossed as well. We're sending you good vibes. Let's see if I can get my screens straight. That's fairly straight. Okay. Hello, West Virginia. Thanks for checking in. Make sure we got everything ready to go here. Clean up my mess. NJ, just passed your N10-007. Congratulations. Hello, Italy. Thanks for checking in. Thanks for being here. We've got plenty to do. This is very bright on my eyes. Let's turn this down a little. And down this way as well. Okay. Let's check cameras. Let's check mics. Let's check all of this stuff. I think we're in pretty good shape. Yep. Cameras are good. That looks good. You can kind of see what I see. I was looking at these the cameras that are there. So we're fine. So we are fine. Hello, Saudi Arabia and Ethiopia. Folks checking in from all around the world today. It's good to have you here. We've got plenty of Network Plus today. I wrote all of this new content this weekend. And Romania and Serbia. I'm wondering if we'll get any United States, any more folks from the U.S. checking in. Pakistan, Syria. This is great. It's fantastic. Thanks for being here. There's lots that we're going to do today. I always like the networking one. Networking is when things really started taking off in my careers, when I started understanding what was happening on the network. Because from there, you really understand how everything works. You have sort of the secret code to how all of the rest of IT operates, because now you know the network. Hello, St. Vincent. Thanks for being here again. Hello, India. The Outer Banks of North Carolina, welcome. Thanks for being here. There's some Florida folks, my fellow Florida folks. Hello, West Palm Beach. Good to have you here. Hello, Detroit. Lafayette, Louisiana. Good to have you here as well. The goal today is to do plenty with Network Plus. I think most of the questions I have today kind of cover both 7 and 8. So I think we're pretty good there, although there may be some very specific N10-008 questions that we finally get to. Hello, Claremont. Thanks for being here down near the Orlando area. There's Morocco. Welcome. Hello, Uganda. Welcome. We've got plenty. Indianapolis, Indiana's checking in. Lake Worth, down South Florida. Thanks for being here. Hello, Dallas. What is the weather like now? The weather, 71 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know if you can see that over my shoulder. 71 Fahrenheit. Today, the high will be 73 Fahrenheit. Low 55. That seems chilly. I may have to wrap the pipes. We may have to find a jacket. Here in Florida, it gets below 60 and we're freezing. We don't know how to react. Can we drive on the streets? Where's the salt? Nobody here salts anything. There's no salting in Florida. We don't have salt. The salt that we have here goes in our water softeners. That's the only thing we would do with salt here. Outside of the kitchen, there's not much use for it. Not much salting going on. The key here in Florida is just to be able to live through the summers. I guess that's really it. It's always something. Hello, Cleveland. Hello, Houston. Hello, Pittsburgh. Hello, Iran. Hello, South Louisiana. Yeah, one freeze. We don't know what to do. I think Atlanta's probably, you get just up to Atlanta, and occasionally in the winter there will be snow or there will be ice, and then the airport doesn't know what to do because the Atlanta airport is not designed for the cold. I used to travel by air around the country, and I would, in the winter, have to travel to California, Minnesota, Michigan, New York. And those folks, they know how to handle the cold. It's just cold all the time. They have no problem with it. But here in the South, we don't know. We don't understand. We have no perspective of what that is, nor do we want perspective of what that is. So that's my my weather report for you. I know it's more than we probably were wanting to hear, but there it is. Hello, Maryland. My Maryland. There's Manchester in the UK. That Manchester, because we have our own over here as well. Probably have a couple, right? We've got Oregon. Hello, Saudi Arabia, Georgia, Sweden. More Maryland, Richmond. More Maryland and Baltimore. Thanks. Yeah, it hasn't been super cold recently, has it? It's been pretty well here in the South, because occasionally, I would say 5 years ago, it snowed here in North Florida. I mean, that happens. You get those crazy things that occur, but most of the time, it's not the case. I need to do some dusting. I need to clean the studio up. I have plans for that. We're finishing up our N10-008 course. So we've got, after that, I have some updates to do to some of the lighting, to some of the infrastructure in here. We're going to be simplifying and changing the way that you won't see any change, but I'm changing some of the back-end processes, effectively having everything operate out of my desk, which up until recently was not that way. I still have lights that are the ones behind me, for example. You can't see them in the shop. They're lights that are kind of right to just behind me, up high, and they're hanging from the ceiling. Well, now and they're big lights. Well, now we have much smaller lights, and you can mount them on your desk, and they're LED, and they take up very little room, and they don't get hot. And so there's lots of good plans that are going to be happening here over the next couple of months. I'm excited about it. We'll get those done before we have to shoot another course. So I probably have another, 8 videos to shoot for Network Plus, which is great. Oh, we're getting close to time, aren't we? Okay, keynote. Green light. Do I have a green light? I do have a green light. There we go. I think that gets us to the top of the hour. And I think we should start the study group. Let's do one. I'll do questions. Hold your questions. We will take any and all of these questions in the second hour. I would love to go back and have a look at those. Let's do a study group. I have a graphic for it. There it is. Here we go, everybody. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the N10-008 Network Plus Study Group for November of 2021. Can you believe it's November already? If you're watching this in the replay, then of course you can, because it's already passed. But if you're here live, we're all just trying to figure it all out. Here we've got plenty to do in this hour. I'm going to ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And then in the second hour, I'll take questions from the chat room. So it's sort of me asking questions first, and then you get to ask questions. We got plenty to go through, and we're so glad that you're here to do this with us. We've got, if you are here live, we have a way that you can answer the questions live. Simply pop open a new browser window and browse to professormesser.com/QA. That's professormesser.com/QA. And you will see there's a question waiting for you on that page. Everything goes well. There is also an app you can get. Of course, there's an app you can get. It is the Socrative student app. Socrative is the service we use to do this Q&A. They have an app on whatever your favorite app store happens to be. That is the student app. They have a teacher app too. You don't need that one. I use that one. You use the student app. It will ask you for a room name. The room name is Professor Messer, all one word, PROFESSOR MESSER. And if you do that, there will be a question waiting for you. That question asks, a firewall is blocking all traffic using TCP 3389. Which OSI layer is associated with this process? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? The rules as we go through this, of course, are that you answer the questions by visiting professormesser.com/QA. Please don't put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Think about this question. Think about these layers. We're going to come back to this in just a moment. Thanks for being here. We do one of these study groups every month for Network Plus. We do other study groups for A+. We do study groups for Security Plus. We've got all kinds of things going on. There's a lot happening here with creating Network Plus content. So this is kind of fun to be in the middle of this. We can talk more about that in the after show if you'd like. But in the meantime, of course, you can see when all of the latest videos are coming out by joining our YouTube channel. Go to professormesser.com/YouTube and subscribe. Make sure you click the bell because I will be putting out more Network Plus videos here in the next couple of weeks. There's a lot of videos that are going to be coming up, so it's going to be pretty exciting. Don't forget about our weekly pop quiz question. You can find that on Twitter, professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram. Yep, I put questions and answers on Instagram. Comes with a pretty picture. You really can't beat that. It's really a nice thing to have. If you are interested in learning more about the Network Plus certification, you have a couple of choices right now. For those of you that have been around for a while, you know that the N10-007 is one of the exams that you could take right now to earn your Network Plus. That N10-007 was released on March the 1st of 2018, and CompTIA has told us that the retirement date will be June of 2022. So if you have been studying the N10-007, you've been working towards learning everything on the N10-007 exam objectives, then this is the version you should still be taking. You've got plenty of time to pass this exam. There's no reason to change things in the middle of everything that you're doing. It's 90 minutes long for an exam, a maximum of 90 questions. It's a single exam, and you have to score 720 on a scale from 100 to 900. This consists of both multiple choice questions and performance-based questions. We'll talk about that in a moment. Now, as you can tell, March 1st of 2018 was quite a long time ago. So CompTIA, of course, every 3 years or so, they update the questions. They create a new exam. But they also know that people are studying the old exam. They don't want to cut those people off, so they no longer have an exam to study. So right now, you can take the 007 until June, or you could take the newer 008. The N10-008 was released on September the 15th of 2021, so it's not been out for very long. We have an estimated retirement date of that one to be March of 2025. So there's plenty of time if you're planning to work through that one. So if you get into this and you're trying to figure out which one of these do I take, either one would be fine. We got plenty of options to work through this. Now, the question is, how many study materials are available for you? There are many, many more N10-007 study materials available out there right now. Probably this month, the next month, beginning of the year, you will certainly see more books available. And right now, things are starting to roll out a little bit. But at least you have an option. Whichever one you choose, pick that option and go with it. Don't use your N10-007 materials to study for the 008 exam or vice versa. So make sure that all of your study materials really do need to match the version of the exam you're planning to take. That probably more than anything is the most important, because N10-008 has about 40% of the exam objectives are brand new. So that's quite a big difference. You don't want to be studying for the wrong exam when you walk in. That's going to be quite a problem for you. You can find out more about what you should be learning by going to professormesser.com/objectives and follow the link that will get you over to the CompTIA website so you can download those exam objectives. There's plenty of things that you'll need to know about Network Plus. The Network Plus Success Bundle for N10-007 is on my website that has course notes, practice exams, my exam, well, not practice exams yet. Oh, I spoke too soon. We will be working on some of those. We can talk about that in a moment. My Exam Hacks ebook, we've got video, we've got audio. All the MP3s are there. There's plenty to see on the Network Plus side. You can find out more about that at professormesser.com/netsuccess. If you're watching this on a live stream, thank you for being here live. We also have this available on a video replay immediately afterwards. Pretty much turns around pretty quick, and you can get a video replay. Some folks like an audio version in a replay in podcast format. So I do publish it that way. You can go to professormesser.com/podcast, and you can add it to your podcast listening program. So it downloads automatically into your listening device, or you can stream it directly from that page. The A+, the Network Plus, and the Security Plus course study groups are available there. So plenty to choose from at professormesser.com/podcast. I'll also let you know that we have these timestamps on the YouTube video description. Have you ever seen these? Just expand out the video description. You can jump to any question, any answer, any question from the chat room. They're all available right there just by clicking. We're able to do this because my marketing manager, Lori, is watching this replay. Hi, Lori. Everybody say hi to Lori. She is listening to this. She's taking timestamps. She's noting them. She's updating that list so that we can easily find this information later. And a number of you have said you're using this to be able to find information quickly. I think it's a nice thing to have there. Feel free to have a look in the YouTube video description. Well, we're only here for a couple of hours today, but you can always show up in our chat room and have a conversation with folks who may be studying. Make sure you join our Discord. Go to professormesser.com/Discord, and you can, of course, join us. We got plenty of folks that are on our Discord server. Thousands of folks have joined. We'd love to have you there with us as well. That's usually where I'm hanging out when I'm not doing a live stream. So if you ever need to ping me directly, it's a great way to at least see what's going on. If I'm around, I'll certainly respond. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord or follow the icon at the upper right on the Professor Messer website. I'll also let you know that you should never pay full price for a voucher. There are discounted vouchers available on the Professor Messer website. So you can certainly go to the CompTIA website or the Pearson VUE website and pay full price, or visit professormesser.com/vouchers and purchase any of the vouchers you might need for your CompTIA exam. One thing that is nice about this is if you buy it from my site, I will give you my Exam Hacks ebook for free. This is a life hack kind of ebook that gives you 14 different tips on what you can do to study, what you can do during your exam, and in some cases, what you may have to do after your exam to be able to get more points or study just a little bit better for your exam. That's included absolutely free if you buy the voucher from my site. And you don't need any coupon code or voucher code or whatever ridiculousness that's required on other websites. You just show up and they're already discounted. So it's another nice thing to have. Find that at professormesser.com/vouchers and never pay full price for your voucher. Let's go back to that question we looked at earlier. The question asked, a firewall is blocking all traffic using TCP 3389. Which OSI layer is associated with this process? Is it layer 1, layer 2, layer 3, layer 4, or layer 7? Let's see how you answered. 58% of you say it's layer 4. 22% of you say it's layer 3. And then we have single digits for all the others. 9% for layer 7, 8% for layer 2, 4% for layer 1. OSI layers are so important. We use it as sort of a common method of communication between different groups or different people so we can really focus in on what part of the network we're really talking about. It's sort of one of those second languages we use when we're describing what's happening with folks. In this case, all we know is a firewall is blocking traffic using a TCP port number. That's all we know, which means this firewall isn't doing anything special with applications. It's not down at the MAC address level. We're really just blocking information based on a port number. Also not blocking information based on an IP address. And that means that we're working at layer 4. Layer 4 is the transport layer. Anytime you're working with port numbers like TCP port numbers or UDP port numbers, we're talking about layer 4. This isn't layer 7. If we had said we're blocking all traffic that corresponds to Microsoft's remote desktop protocol, well, then the firewall would be application aware. It would recognize any remote desktop protocol. It will block it desktop protocol regardless of what port number was in use. But in this case, we were most concerned about a particular port number using TCP 3389. That's clearly layer 4. So if all of you that answered layer 4, answer D, got it absolutely right. If we were blocking all traffic associated with a particular IP address, it would be layer 3. If we were blocking traffic somehow with a particular MAC address, it would be layer 2. But in this case, layer 4 was our correct answer. 57% of you must have remembered that from last month. That was our rewind question. So that gets us started. Now you've been able to get into the Q&A. You kind of see how this process works. Let's now change our focus a bit, because as many of you are aware, on the actual exam, there is a very different approach as you start the exam. You don't get a lot of multiple choice questions. This was a multiple choice question. There was a question and multiple choices that you could choose from. But of course, on your exam, the first handful of questions you get are related to what we call performance-based questions. That means the question could be anything asked any way. It could be a fill in the blank. It could be presenting you at a command prompt. It could be a matching question. It could be putting things in a particular order. It could be a sorting process. It could be a drag and drop. It could be anything. So I have for you a performance-based question, and I'm going to give you this question. It is one that you don't have to be at a command prompt to be able to answer this, but it will help you if you go through this process. Here is your question. It asks, from the command line, determine the number of hops between your computer and quad 9. So from the command line, determine the number of hops between your computer and 9.9.9.9. That's what we're looking for. If you think you know the answer, this is probably going to be a different answer for everyone because I'm asking you for a number of hops. But if you were to give me the process you used to find the number of hops, that would help me as well as we go through the answers for this. From the command line, in fact, pop open a command line on your computer right now and determine the number of hops between your computer and quad 9. Let's see if you happen to know the answer. Now, if you do know the answer, you can see the link right there at the bottom of your screen at professormesser.com/QA. That's where you want to put the answer, right there. To be able to determine what this answer is, you're going to at least have to run one particular utility. Let's see if you're able to do this or you can remember which utility this happens to be. I'm going to have a sneak peek at the answers that are coming through. Some of you folks are spot on, but you're telling me what the command would be to make this happen. That wasn't my question. My question was determine, well, I guess it sort of is. That's half the question. The other one is determine the number of hops. How many hops is it? So that's what I want to know. See if you can tell me what it happens to be. This is kind of a practical question, and everyone is going to have a different answer because the number of hops from your device may be different than the number of hops from someone else. Now, if you went ahead and you put one of the answers down, if you gave me the command you would use at this command line, I'll accept that. I'll give you full credit because this isn't an actual exam. I think that's a perfectly reasonable answer. But I want to see what it happens to be. In fact, I have it up on my screen. I'll show you what mine ended up looking like so you can figure out the best way to go about doing this. I think a number of you have done this before. I'm seeing a number of options come through. Notice the command prompt I have on the screen is very specific as well. So make sure you know what command prompt that is and what the command is that you would use for that command prompt. So this would be good. This would be really good. I think this is not the same as one of those questions I asked before, but it's similar. It's very similar to one that I did before. These are good commands to know. There's a lot of commands in the Network Plus exam that you need to know. So this is another one that would be really good to work through. Before we look at the answer, SH in the chat room just came home from the 007 exam and passed it. Congratulations. Fantastic. This is one exam that is a great one to have. As I mentioned earlier, once you know how the network operates, you effectively know how all of IT operates. Now, you're not an expert in everything IT, but you certainly can get down to the very specifics and understand, is it the application? Is it the network? What's going on? It's all good. So good to be able to have this. This question would apply to whether you were studying for the 007 or the 008. So let's see how you did with this one. From the command line, determine the number of hops between your computer and Quad 9. Quad 9 is a DNS provider. Their DNS IP address is 9.9.9.9, which makes it easy to remember. And their name is Quad 9 because it's 4 nines, for those of you that weren't following. The best way to do this command is to run a trace route. Now, on my computer, this is the sort of the Linux or Unix version of the answer, which is traceroute. If you were in Windows, it'd be traceRT, but it would provide the same information as this. You can see in my example, 8 hops. I'm 8 hops away from Quad 9, from my device up here, all the way down to Quad 9. Now, I ran a traceroute with a -n in this example because I did not want it to do a DNS lookup on every IP address through every hop that it went through. So it did provide me with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. In fact, the 5th hop, I do 3 different trace routes as it goes through here. You can see the timestamps for all 3 of those as they're going through. Notice on hop 5, there were 3 different IP addresses we went through. There must be some redundancy in this connection where it can choose different paths to go through depending on how it's configured. So hop 5 could go through 3 different configurations, which is good. If you lose one of those IP addresses, one of those routers fails, you still have another 2 you could go through, which is kind of nice. You've got hop 6, hop 7, and there's hop 8 is Quad 9, and that finally got us there. 8 hops to be able to get there from my particular computer. So that's useful to have this functionality. Now, on your computer, it would be traceRT if you're in Windows. So it would provide you exactly the same response as what we're seeing here. In fact, I could bring this up. Why don't I see if I can get my Windows. Should we do Windows 10 or Windows 11? I'm going to do Windows 10 because I know I don't think I've licensed my Windows 11 yet. I installed it and I didn't purchase a license yet. So instead of seeing all the crazy messages pop up, a timeout is a little bit of a problem. If we don't get a response from a router, it will try 3 times and it should go to the next hop after that. So even if it doesn't respond, you can count that as a hop, and it should count as a hop. Occasionally, routers will be configured not to respond to you, not to participate in this trace route, which is perfectly reasonable, by the way, and it's not uncommon to find that. Many different network administrators will disable that functionality so that you don't run into an issue of people gaining access or finding information about your routers and what they might be doing. So let's do one on my machine. Here we go. We can run a traceRT. I don't have this. The fonts are not great on here. traceRT, just Quad 9. For those of you wondering, what in the world? What are you doing? What's happening? So it's going through all of these right now. Each one of those hops, I didn't turn off the DNS, so we get some of the I'm on the Comcast network, so you can see the Comcast names. And there it is, all the way to 8 different hops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I was able to do a trace route to dns9.quad9.net, which is 9.9.9.9. There it is. Now, some of you said, what about path ping? Couldn't we have used path ping? Yes, you could have. But path ping takes minutes to run. We'd still be waiting here as we're waiting for the path ping to finish, because all path ping does is effectively does a trace route, and then it does analysis of every hop in there. Well, that wasn't what we wanted. We didn't need to do a detailed analysis of every hop. I just want to know how many hops away it is. On my machine, it's 8 hops away, and my trace is complete. That is the correct answer. Trace route or trace RT, either one of those I would accept. Obviously, from the screenshot I gave you here, it would be Trace RT because that's a Windows. But it's good if you know both of them because you have to know both of them for the exam objectives. So that is pretty nice to be able to have a perspective of understanding what options might be available in either operating system because you might be asked that on the exam. This is good stuff, and this is something you should know whether you're studying for your N10-007 or your N10-008, and there are many other command lines you need to know. Make sure you're familiar with all of them. This one, I think most of you did pretty good. It would not be ping. I got a lot of people that said they would use ping. Ping is great for understanding if a device happens to be available. So we could run a ping to quad 9, but all of that a ping is going to tell me is that, yeah, quad 9's there. That's it. That's all it told me is that quad 9. Now, how many hops is between me and quad? You don't know. I guess you could sort of count time to live if you knew what time to live was originally, but TTL is not the most perfect way to know if this is going to be the correct number of hops. If you could actually see them and count them, traceroute is the better choice. That is the best answer. If you were going to do this, that's the one I think would be your fastest and most effective way to be able to understand that. A hop is when you go through a router. Anytime you hit a router, we call that a hop. The router has to now determine where you need to go. You're hopping through the router. Kind of an odd name, but that's what we've decided to call it. We've got plenty of odd names. That's just one of many. That's what we've decided to call it in the industry to figure out those. This is a good one to be able to figure this out. Make sure you're familiar with all these. Let's do another question. I've got a multiple choice question for you. This is one definitely an N10-008 question and not an N10-007 question, which may give you a hint as to what it can be. The question asks, a user moves seamlessly between access points when walking between campus buildings. Which of the following provides this functionality? Is it ESSID, cellular roaming, MU-MIMO, CSMACA, or WPA3? A user moves seamlessly between access points when walking between campus buildings. Which of the following provides this functionality? Is it ESSID, cellular roaming, MU-MIMO, CSMACA, or WPA3? If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA. That's the link right there on your screen to answer this question. Lock it in. It's A, B, C, D, or E, and we'll figure out what these answers happen to be. This should be a good one. Routers definitely are hop. There's no such thing as a layer 3 switch, so we can't say the layer 3 switch would be an option for that. I always like to put that in at least one Network Plus study group a month. I like to fit it in there that layer 3 switches aren't real things. Maybe it's layer 2 routers. Would it still be a hop if it was a layer 2 router and not a layer 3 switch? These questions, they're such difficult questions to figure out. This is absolutely an N10-008 question. There's a little bit more detail around some of these technical options, technical items for this. So make sure that you are familiar with the exam objectives for the N10-008 if you're planning to take the N10-008. Now, those of you that are watching that are taking your N10-007, this particular question won't apply to you exactly, although it is a neat technology you should be familiar with. You might even be using this in your home. If you have if you have multiple access points, you want to move seamlessly between the access points, this may be doing that. So we'll have to see how you answer this one. Just for the chat room, just passed your Security Plus 601 exam on Monday. Congratulations. Very well done. Security Plus is a tough exam. The 601 is a big exam. So that's got to feel good. Are you now studying for your Network Plus? Are you doing it backwards like I did? I did Security Plus first, then Network Plus, then A Plus. So maybe you're like me and you do it backwards. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asked, a user moves seamlessly between access points when walking between campus buildings. Which of the following provides this functionality? Is it ESSID, cellular roaming, MU-MIMO, CSMA-CA, or WPA3? If we look at our results, we're not really sure. We did not get a majority, but 42% of you said it's ESSID. We have 27% of you that said that is multi-user MIMO. We have 14% that said cellular roaming, and 11% said CSMA-CA. So a lot of double digits on this to be able to work through it. We've got 8%, almost double digits, that said WPA3. So this is one where we really do need to understand what we're doing. I've got the two access points in my home, and as I move from upstairs to downstairs, from one side of the house to the other, it automatically switches back and forth between the access points, but I don't even see it. It's just completely seamless in the way that it operates. And it's able to do this using, the technical term that's using is the Extended Service Set, or ESSID. This is what's happening. So let's take a scenario with an ESSID. You've got a router maybe on your network, or a switch. This would be a switch these access points are plugged into. These access points, we have two separate access points. You can see they are two separate physical devices because you can see the BSSID, which is the MAC address of these devices, is different between the two. They might be in different buildings. They might be in different parts of the same building. This would be like I have at home. And you can see right now I'm on my phone. I have a laptop. There's a television or a computer. And all of these devices are connected to one access point. Now, if I was to move to the other side of the building, I was move across campus, I'm too far away from that first access point to get any signal. I can't communicate that way, but it's okay. There's another SSID, or name of the network here, that's exactly the same with exactly the same security information. I will automatically, or my device will automatically find this new access point that has the same SSID, the same security settings, and it notices that it's exactly the same, so it simply moves over automatically to be able to use this access point. So I was able to maintain connectivity. I didn't have to reconfigure anything in my phone. I didn't have to click a button. It just automatically moved when I walked to the other side of the building because everything is set up with the same extended service set, which really means that I've named and configured both of these access points to have effectively the same wireless configuration. That is the right answer, ESSID. If you answered A, ESSID, 40% of you chose that one. That is the right answer. That's what you should be using. That is the thing that does provide that seamless movement between different access points. Can you imagine if you were at work and you had a campus and there were 50 access points on this campus? Can you imagine if every time somebody moved from building to building, they had to reconfigure a wireless setting? That would be challenging. So the ESSID allows us to just simply configure it one time, and it's always connected to the network. Makes it very easy. This would not be multi-user MIMO. Multi-user MIMO is a technology that sends information to multiple devices at the same time over the same frequencies, which is great. So you can have multiple devices, maybe all streaming, all sending and receiving data, and they're getting just what they need out of that single stream of data. We can separate the streams out and they can get exactly what they need. That multi-user MIMO useful for managing on a single access point, but multi-user MIMO does not have anything to do with moving between access points. It only makes the communication on a single access point more efficient. 14% of you said cellular roaming. Well, we're not on a cellular network. This is 802.11 with our access points. Anytime you see access point, you know this is 802.11. We're not talking about cellular networks, so cellular roaming would not be the right answer. CSMA-CA is a type of lower level communication used by wireless devices. The CSMA obviously is one that's common to The carrier sense multiple access. You see it on Ethernet. You see it on 802.11 wireless. It's a way of connecting to a network with multiple devices. Collision avoidance, which is what the CA stands for, is one method that some wireless devices can use to negotiate who gets to talk on the network at any particular time. In this case, we're not talking about who gets to communicate on the network. We're talking about moving between access points. And although CSMA is a foundational technology on many wireless networks, that's not what CSMA-CA does. So would not be the one we would choose. And WPA3 is an encryption method used on wireless networks. WPA3 has nothing to do with seamlessly moving between access points. The answer here, the one that is the right answer, ESSID. That's what we were using. That is the correct answer. That is how you would configure this entire system with these similarly named SSIDs so that they can both move devices from one to the other. It's very useful to have exactly what you would use on a campus network so that you don't constantly get phone calls to your help desk. And it is the best way to do it. If you've got multiple access points in your home, this is what you're using to do that. Well done. That is a 40% of you for a new technology for something we really haven't talked about on the N10-008 until now. I think you did pretty good with that one. Let's do another one. Since we're talking about wireless, let's do this multiple choice question that asks, a network administrator would like to enable authentication for wireless network users. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be ACL, IPsec, MAC filtering, port security, or 802.1x? A network administrator would like to enable authentication for wireless network users. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would it be ACL, IPsec, MAC filtering, port security, or 802.1x? If you think you know the answer, go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA, lock in your answer. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. To figure out what this one happens to be, have you set up authentication on a wireless network? You may already know this answer. If you've never set up authentication on a wireless network, make sure you step through each one of those answers. All 5 of these are terms you should know from your N10-007 and N10-008 exam. So this question applies for all of you. This covers everyone and being able to work through it, the N10-007 and 008. It's I think we're seeing more and more 008 study materials hit the market. I think we're probably going to see the most kind of the beginning of the year. So the beginning of 2022, I think we'll finally see a lot more books available. The books are the slowest thing to come out. Books are always the last thing. Publishers are just, there's a process. There's a lot that goes on at these publishing companies, and it takes time to write, edit, typeset, print, distribute, or make electronic versions available. There's just so much that has to happen. So it does take a number of months. Once the exam objectives are locked down, and normally the exam objectives aren't provided to the content creators until about 1 or 2 months before the exam goes live. That's not a lot of time to be able to produce a full course. So that's why it does take a little bit of time for these books to come out. And that's why I tell you, if you're planning to take the Network Plus exam right now, you're trying to make a decision, the N10-007 is probably your better choice right now. There's so many more study materials available out there. And it doesn't matter which one you take, which one you pass, you're in the same exam. So there's no functional or advantageous reason that you would use to get the 008 or take the 008 exam. You don't, it's not a better cert. It's exactly the same cert. So that's one of the questions you have to ask yourself and figure out what you're going to do. Let's see the answer to this one. The question asked, a network administrator would like to enable authentication for wireless network users. Which of the following would be the best choice? Would that be ACL, IPsec, MAC filtering, port security, or 802.1x? 59% of you say it's 802.1x is what you would use. 16% said IPsec, 14% said ACL, as some people would tell me, which I can't imagine is correct, but they say it is. ACL, 8% MAC filtering, and 3% port security. 59% was pretty strong. 802.1x, if you're doing anything with network access control or NAC, then you're probably using 802.1x. 802.1x is not exclusive to wireless networks, by the way. It can be used for nearly anything that needs authentication. The capabilities of 802.1x allow you to limit access to a network until somebody provides the right authentication. Now, that's great. It can protect your physical interfaces from somebody simply walking into the room, plugging in their laptop, and gaining access to your network. Before they gain access to the network, they have to first authenticate. There'll be a message pops up on their screen. You need to log in with your credentials. This uses usually some type of EAP, and it uses a backend database, Radius, LDAP, TACAX, Kerberos, whatever it happens to be. Uses something along those lines to be able to then confirm that you are who you say you are and then enable the interfaces that you need to work through. This is a very common thing to see on wireless networks because if you go to work, the last thing you want is to be handing out passwords to the wireless network. Oh, if you need to get on the network, the password's Ninja1. It's Ninja1, everybody. It's Ninja1. And then somebody from outside of your company finds out that it's Ninja1, and then they get on your wireless network, and then they're effectively inside of your network. So nobody does that. Nobody uses pre-shared keys or PSK when they are configuring an enterprise access point. Instead, they are configuring 802.1x, and usually they're telling it to authenticate against some other type of existing database you might have. If you're in a Windows environment, you probably have Active Directory. Active Directory commonly also has an access via LDAP, so you might configure your access point to prompt people with their Windows credentials. They have to type in their Windows username and password, which obviously is specific to them, and then it verifies that via LDAP against the Active Directory database. And if all that matches, they are allowed access to the wireless network. That's great because if they leave the company, we disable their account, they no longer have access to the wireless network. So one of the beautiful things about having that backend database is you can administer everything from that central facility. And if you make any changes to that, it affects all of the access for that user. 802.1x, pretty powerful stuff. And indeed, that is the right answer. 59% of you chose 802.1x. Yes, this is not 802.11, and I'm simply putting in X where the last number is. That's not what that is. That's not a variable. That's a real thing. 802.1x, notice it's capital X, which is different than the lowercase x's that could be used to signify a type of 802.1 standard. So kind of confusing when you look at the uppercase, lowercase things. The 802.1 with a capital X specifies a particular standard, in this case, one relating to network access control. 16% of you said IPsec, which is a great protocol for creating encrypted tunnels, but encrypted tunnels aren't going to help me enable any type of authentication on a wireless network, so it would not be IPsec. ACL, an access control list, or as I mentioned, an ACL, as some people might call it. The ACLs are commonly used to allow or disallow access to a resource. ACL is a very generic term. You can use it to configure access through a router. Firewall rules are ACLs. In a file system, configuring who might have access to a particular directory or a file, those are ACLs. But ACLs aren't used to enable authentication to wireless network users, so that's not going to help you either. MAC filtering is useful to manage, at least add a little administrative capability to who can connect or not connect to a particular network. That doesn't have anything to do with authentication. And then port security, which sounds like that's what it should be, but only 3% of you said port security. Port security is a function that limits how many people might be able to connect to any particular interface on a switch. So that's kind of a Cisco name for a lot of different generic functions, but port security is one that limits who can connect to a switch or how many different devices can connect to a particular interface. doesn't have anything to do with enabling authentication. Of all of these options, the only one that tends to have anything to do with authentication is 802.1x or network access control, and 59% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well done. Let's do another one. Here's one. I like this one. This one also would apply to, I believe, both the 7 and the 8 for Network Plus. This question, kind of a visual daily double, but I'll try to describe it for the people that are listening in on the system, on the podcast side, on the audio only side. The question asks, what utility would be most associated with this output? What utility would be most associated with this output? And here is the output. And this output shows scan report for 10.1.10.1. And it says the host is up. Not shown is 992 closed ports. And then there's a series of ports, a series of states, and a series of services. So the first one shows 22 TCP is filtered, and that's SSH. It shows that 23 TCP is filtered, and that's Telnet. It shows that 53 TCP is open, and that's domain. So you can go get a feel for what these might be. Now, if you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. That's the link that's right on your screen, and you can answer right there. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We'll figure this out as we go through it. This is one you do need to know. Sometimes you'll get questions like this on the exam that show you the output of a particular utility, and you need to figure out where'd that come from? What's good with this? So make sure you're familiar with these. This is one you need to know, as I mentioned, for both people taking the N10-007 and the N10-008. So you have a number of options to think about. Fortunately, on the Network Plus, there's not that many different options. If this was Security Plus, there's like 20 different utilities you need to know. And on this one, not quite the same. Stephen Miller with the $10 super chat. Thank you, Stephen. Stephen says, want to thank you. Your videos helped me pass A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus between August and November. That is an aggressive schedule. Studying for CCNA now, good for you. And going back to school in January for computer science, that is all good in the neighborhood. That is well done. Way to go, Stephen. That's a pretty aggressive A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus in a very short period of time. So well done. And thank you also for the $10 super chat. Completely unnecessary and completely appreciated. We do appreciate it. It does keep the lights on. It keeps this craziness going. Whatever this is that we're doing, we're going to keep it going because of your support. So I appreciate that. And congratulations again. You're heading exactly the right direction to be able to do this. Let's see how you did with this question that asked, what utility would be most associated with this? In fact, I have some options. I didn't even mention what these options were. Let's bring up the options here, which are traceroute, nmap, path ping, IP tables, and NSLOOKUP. I didn't even give you the answers. You were just typing them in because you can, of course, see them on your side. It's not a fill in the blank. For this question, is it traceroute, nmap, path ping, IP tables, or NSLOOKUP? It's got to be one of those, right? Let's see how you did with this one. Let's show the results. And you can see that 81% of you say that it's nmap. That's a pretty big number, single digits for everything else. Tie at 7% between IP tables and NSLOOKUP. 4% of you say path ping. We just talked about path ping. Where'd that come from? 1% of you say it's traceroute. So at least you remembered traceroute from earlier when we initially did that. 81% said nmap. Do you think it's nmap? Of course it's nmap. The network mapper, if you need to do a port scan, you're trying to figure out what ports might be open on a particular device, nmap is the king at showing this information. It is perfect for doing that particular function. But nmap can do a lot more than just show ports. Most people think of nmap as a port scanner. That's all it does. nmap has functionality the likes you have never seen in a utility. It is a Swiss Army knife of security and networking. And the more you know about nmap, the more power you will have at your fingertips. For example, nmap, without logging into a device, without any username, without any password, can remotely across the network tell you what operating system is running on a device. That's interesting in itself. Then it takes it to the next level. It can tell you on a port number that's open what service is running on that port number. I know the port 22 is open. Is that really SSH? Or are they running something else on that port number? And not only on top of that, it can tell you what version of that service is running without logging in, without authenticating to the device. Incredibly powerful with the service scan. And then on top of that, as if that wasn't enough, there's an entire scripting engine for Nmap, and people can create scripts that can do amazing things for Nmap. Plenty of these are available on the Nmap websites. The Nmap scripting engine, the NSE, which uses Lua, L-U-A, to be able to script, which is a very powerful scripting language, and creates and provides amazing functionality. The more you do with Nmap, the more you realize you had no idea what Nmap does. It is really a remarkable utility. If you're planning to get into networking and or security, spend all of your time looking at Nmap. Spend a day, spend a couple days playing around with some of the functions of Nmap. You will be surprised at the functionality that's there. This question, of course, that showed all of these different port numbers and whether they were filtered or opened or closed or everything else is Nmap. This is the correct answer. Nmap, 81% of you chose Nmap. Would not be path ping. Path ping shows a trace route and then statistics to every one of those routes. So we know it's not that. We also know it's not trace route because we did one of those earlier. So that's not the right answer. IP tables is a firewall that is built into many different flavors of Linux. So that is not what we would see here. This is not a firewall setup. This is a scan report that came from a device. And then NSLOOKUP is used to query a name server, commonly for a fully qualified domain name, or if you do a reverse lookup, an IP address, and then you can get information back. Very useful to have, but that doesn't have anything to do with the scan report that we have in front of us. The only option here that makes sense, and the one that 81% of you chose, is Nmap. That is the right answer. That is what you can do. Can you sniff packets on Nmap? You can tell Nmap to show you the packets that it's sending back and forth, absolutely, and even save them and bring them up in those. I think it's pretty useful. This is a great utility. Make sure you're familiar with it. Only one of those. Nmap is available on any operating system and probably some you've never even heard of before. That's how global it is. If you have a device, absolutely can run Nmap. Doesn't matter. The only thing that doesn't run Nmap super well, there's some features of Nmap that need to create their own packets, but operating systems like Windows restrict the ability for applications to do that. So the best Nmap is going to be in something like Linux or Mac OS. A functional Nmap will be, you can use it in Windows, but Windows is not the best option for doing things that need to craft their own packets by default. Windows has done that for security reasons, and there's good reasons to do that. But if you need to craft some very particular packets, Windows is not going to work very well for you because that's just the way it is. I don't have an answer for you other than that's just the way it is. As you can tell already, there's a ton of different things you need to know about. If you're studying for your N10-007 or your N10-008, I've taken all of the text, all of the graphics, all of the charts from all of my videos, and I put them into one document. So for the N10-007, I have my N10-007 course notes. The N10-007, 101 videos, 12 hours of content. There's a lot there. We're going to probably end up having just over 90 videos on the N10-008, but it's probably going to be longer than 12 hours. It's a little bit different format for the N10-008, but I've got course notes for the N10-008 as well. This is the physical version that I'm holding. See if I can just show them to you. Here we go. It's a better shot of the N10-008 course notes. They're all in color. It's a beautiful, well-produced, high-quality book. But if you just want the video or the digital version, the PDF version, it's not a video version, it's a PDF version. There's a digital version of this available as well. You can find this all on my website for the 7 and the 8. Make sure you choose the right version. You can find that in the pull-down menus at the top of the site. But if you want to quickly go to the N10-007, you'll find it at professormesser.com/NPCN for Network Plus course notes. That will eventually change here pretty quickly here in the next month or two. So everything. So yes, you can. There's no hardcover copy. No, we don't do hardcovers for these. I'd love a hardcover too, but the cost would be sort of ridiculous to have hardcover. I should look into that. Maybe it's a good option. Maybe more people would like hardcover. I don't know, to have those. So that's one of those. If you ever get into it, certainly works for what we're doing. Let's see. Now that you've seen the course notes, in fact, I'm not even going to show them on my screen because you've seen the course notes before. You got a feel for this as we go through. It's a great way to support the site. And of course, we have many other things happening on the Network Plus side. Make sure you keep checking back on the website for all of the other things that we are going to have available for the 008. Let's do another question. We can fit another one in here. This question asks, a company is connecting 2 locations across the city using 100 megabit per second Ethernet links. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Would it be WAN, PAN, SAN, MAN, or CAN? A company is connecting 2 locations across the city using 100 megabit per second Ethernet links. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it WAN, PAN, SAN, MAN, or CAN? There's the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. Lock in your answer. See if you can get the right thing thrown in there. We know that you've got a number of options available here. They all sound familiar, but they're all real things. I didn't make any of those up, even though they sound the same, sort of how it works. Does N10-008 have more crossover with Security Plus than 007? No, there's practically no crossover with Security Plus. There's very, very little. I would probably say in the single percentage. That's probably what I would put anyway. I haven't done the actual math on it. There's very little crossover between Network Plus and Security Plus. There's a few topics that are discussed in both, but Security Plus is so enormous that actually very little crosses over between the two. So that's what you would be able to do if you're ever working through this and figuring it out. It's 2 very different exams. Network Plus, Security Plus kind of stand on their own from that perspective. That's something that is really up to you, though. Some people start with Security Plus. Some people start with Network Plus. I think that's one of those. I love questions that say, is this live or it's replay? I don't know. Depends on when you're watching. It could be both. It could be neither. We'll have to figure this out when we're done. Later on, we'll figure out whether we're live or whether this is the replay. A company is connecting 2 locations across the city using 100 megabit per second Ethernet links. Which of the following would best describe this connection? Is it a WAN, a PAN, a SAN, a MAN, or a CAN? That would be the wrong button. I'd like you to see the results. There you go. And 74% of you say that it is a MAN. 20% say it's a WAN. No, it's a WAN. And then 3% say it's a CAN. 1% said SAN. 1% said PAN. So the real question becomes then, what could this be? What are we working through? What is the right answer for something like this? The real key with this question is that we are connecting 2 locations across the city. Locations across the city is the real key in this question. How they're connecting, not as important. The number of locations is really not as important. The real important part is it's 2 locations or locations across a city to be able to have that there. So the locations across the city are in kind of a metropolitan area. So, of course, if you were connecting devices in a metropolitan area, in the Tri-County area, then you would connect them on a metropolitan area network, or MAN, metropolitan area network. The metropolitan area network is really referring to kind of a local municipality or groupings of municipalities. If you're in an area that has a lot of large cities that are very close to each other, since I'm in Florida, let's take examples of the Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach counties. That's sort of a metropolitan area. It's a very big metropolitan area, but it is metropolitan area nonetheless. Anytime we're connecting devices, we're usually using a local exchange carrier, or a LEC, a local exchange carrier. All that means it's your local phone company is usually who's setting this up and making this available, because the local phone company has access to put fiber in the ground in their local area, which means they can give you high speeds over a short area. Now, if you're in Florida and you wanted to go 4 hours away to Orlando, well, that's very different, because it's a different local exchange carrier in Orlando than there is in Broward County and Fort Lauderdale. So you can't connect those. It's too far away from metropolitan area. Metropolitan area is basically in your city or your city area, your tri-state area, as maybe the only people who say that are meteorologists. So the weather person on the television in your tri-state area is really referring to a metropolitan area in your metropolitan area network. In fact, most of the times you're plugging into Ethernet. Metro E is what they call it, Metro Ethernet, where you're plugging in at 100 megabit or higher speeds these days, or gig. They'll charge you, of course, the faster you go. Governments often do this because they already have the right of way. They don't have to go through a lot of permitting. They do, but they can write their own permits. So governments tend to put their own fiber in the ground and connect all the government facilities together very inexpensively. And if they don't do that, they probably should. Putting fiber in the ground is relatively inexpensive for the amount of data and how much you're going to send over that. A metropolitan area network is the right answer. Those of you that answered D-man, got it right. 75% of you got it absolutely correct. It would not be a wide area network. Wide area networks would be in a different city, a different municipality. Away from your municipality would be a wide area network. You're usually going across to another city, another state, another country, would be a wide area network to have those there. We've got a CAN. 3% of you said campus area network. Obviously, we're not on a campus. We're 2 locations across a city. But if we were in an office complex and we had 7 buildings and we were connecting all 7 of our buildings together, that would be a campus area network. We've got a PAN, which is a personal area network. It's not Palo Alto Networks. It's a personal area network. A PAN is something that's right here in our room. So I would have on my phone, I would connect my phone to a set of speakers over Bluetooth, and those would be my personal area network, my personal area. It really wouldn't go outside of this room. It stays right here in my personal area. And then a SAN is not a type of networking. It's referring to a storage area network where you are storing data on a series of drives, usually hard drives, because we need large capacity in a storage area network. But that information is being stored on a remote set of drives, usually set up as a RAID array. So storage area network. In this case, the only thing that makes sense, because we are connecting 2 locations across a city, would be a metropolitan area network. If you answered D, 76% of you got that one absolutely right. Let's do another one. I know it's top of the hour. We're going to do one more to kind of lock this thing in. Here we go. This question asks, which of these would support a 40 gigabit per second Ethernet network link? Would it be QSFP, SFP, QSFP plus, SFP plus, or GBIC? Which of these would support a 40 gigabit per second Ethernet network link? Is it QSFP, SFP, QSFP plus, SFP plus, or GBIC? There's a lot there to go through. This question works for someone who's studying for the 007 or the 008. So Whichever one you're working towards, this question applies to you. You're good either way. You're a winner either way. You feel lucky today? This is 40 gigabits per second Ethernet, which is a real thing. 40 gigabits per second Ethernet is kind of the midway between 10 and 100, if you will. I know it's not exactly midway, but it's different how, depending on what we do with technologies, it's very different how we approach these particular problems in our data centers, how much money we have available. Maybe we have existing fiber that maybe we wouldn't have to run new fiber if we used a different technology. There's all kinds of variables. It's always, a lot of people say, I just need this. I just want to run that. Well, that may be more expensive than running something else. So it's one of those where you really do have to break down each one of these technologies and understand what they do. Lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Which of these would support a 40 gigabit per second Ethernet network link? Is it a QSFP and SFP, QSFP plus, SFP plus, or GBIC? So this is one where, let's look at the results here and see what you've chosen. 54% of you, just over half, say it's QSFP plus. We have effectively a three-way tie between QSFP, SFP plus, and GBIC, and only 1% said SFP. So this really, we talk about higher speed Ethernet, you at a minimum are probably going to be talking about a QSFP. And in the case of 40 gigabits per second, we're really talking about QSFP plus, which is 4-channel SFP. It's quad SFP. And this quad SFP plus is quad SFP plus. QSFP plus is 4 10 gigabit per second links. There's your 40 gigabits per second. That allows you to put all of that into a single transceiver, a single strands of fiber, and be able to have the most efficient communication. In fact, if you did bidirectional QSFP plus, you could even increase it again twice as fast, or at least twice the available bandwidth would be there because you got it in both directions. The BiDi QSFP plus. In our example, QSFP plus was indeed the right answer. 52% of you chose QSFP plus. That is exactly what we were looking for, and the only one of these that supports the speeds we need to support 40 gigabits per second Ethernet and be able to get those correct. If you answered C, QSFP plus, that is the right answer. GBICs can only support 1 gigabit, so you're not going very far with GBIC. QSFP and SFP are the slower speeds. The plus at the end means that it's the faster speeds, but the only one that gets up to 40 is the QSFP plus. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, then one of the things that you want to do, or what you do want to do, is only one thing you can do to be able to receive an email from me that certifies that you watch this, is go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link. It will bring up a form. In that form, put your name, put your email address. In the subject line, put November Network Plus 2021 or something like that. As long as I know, as long as I can figure it out, that's good. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code word of the month, GBIC. Kind of shifted gears on you there, didn't I? GBIC is the super secret code word of the month. Then you can put anything else you would like into that message. I read through all of them. I'm not able to respond back to all of them, but I do read through all of them and send that message to me. It takes me about a week to turn these around, but I'll send you an email that has been digitally signed that certifies you must have watched this for a 1-hour continuing education unit credit under the webinar category. So again, what you would do is go to the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address, November 2021 Network Plus Study Group, and put the super secret code word of the month, GBIC, and I'll send you that email in a week or less. We'll say that. Sometimes I'm able to get them out pretty quick, but a week or less kind of gets you there. That covers my base. Usually when I say a week or less, a week comes around pretty quick for me. And then I end up thinking, wow, has it been a week? I better get these out. But if you need one faster than I can get it to you, make sure you tell me. Send me a note, and I can always turn them around a little quicker if you're on a tight schedule. I don't want anybody to have to wait on me, and I can usually turn them around pretty quick. If you are watching this video and you've noticed there are some things in here I didn't recognize, then you need to make sure you download the objectives. Use this as your checklist. It will help you on your studies. It will also make a great checklist before you go and take the exam, just to make sure that you are able to really understand exactly what could be asked of you on this exam. It is a fantastic document. It is free. So go to professormesser.com/objectives, and you can, of course, download. There's a link there that will take you to the CompTIA website where you can download the latest exam objectives. They are fantastic. This should be the first thing you download before you study. It should be the last thing you reference whenever you work through this. So make sure you know exactly what you're going to be asked about on the exam. I have people come to me all the time that say, I took the exam. They asked a lot of things I wasn't ready for. They asked me a question on GBIC. Like, well, that's in the exam objectives. Did you get the exam objectives? They said, no, I just thought that was a kind of a general overview. Like, nope, it would have told you that you needed to know what a GBIC was. So make sure that you download those objectives. I can't believe they're free. I can't believe there's so much data. Microsoft doesn't do this. VMware doesn't do this. Cisco doesn't do this. Nobody else does this. So take advantage of the fact that they tell you everything you need to know. Pretty important to have that. We do one of these study groups every month. We actually do multiple study groups in a month. Last week we did 2 A+ study groups. Next week we do a Security Plus study group. Although for those of you expecting Security Plus, make sure you check the calendar. The date has moved just a little bit. Next week it's on Thursday instead of Wednesday. In Decembers are always busy, right? So we've kind of crammed them together. We have A+ study groups on the 7th and the 9th. I have a Network Plus study group on the 14th of December and a Security Plus study group on the 16th of December. There's a lot there going on. There's plenty going on. So you never want to miss a study group. If you do, replays are available immediately afterwards, though. So you can always go back and be able to catch when the next study group will be. That's at professormesser.com/calendar. Can you imagine doing this for another hour? Well, you don't have to. Stick around, because I'll take questions from the chat room for the next hour in our after show. Best way to do it. Don't forget about the Network Plus Success Bundle. Go to professormesser.com/netsuccess and figure out what those happen to be. We've also got, of course, our voucher discounts. Go to professormesser.com/vouchers, and you'll be able to figure that piece out. That's plenty to get some savings on. You don't need a coupon code. You don't need to hunt around the internet. You don't need to plug it in your browser. Just go to professormesser.com/vouchers. They're already discounted right there. And of course, make sure you subscribe to YouTube. We have more Network Plus videos coming out before the end of the month. I've got tons that I've got in the can. I'm working on, I'm editing, I'm getting them out really quick. I just have a handful more that I have to shoot, and we're done with the N10-008. I'd love for you to be able to see them. Make sure you subscribe at professormesser.com/YouTube. Also, don't forget about our weekly Network Plus pop quiz questions at professormesser.com/Twitter or professormesser.com/Instagram. If you like this first hour, you got something out of this first hour, you learned something today, please click that thumbs up button that's right there on your video. That helps me a lot. And it's another one of those things you can do that's absolutely free that really does go a long way on this side. Great thing to do is support any of your content creators by always giving them that thumbs up. Thanks for being here. Stick around for the after show. We got plenty more to talk about, and we'll talk about that on the other side of this. Thank you for being here. We will see you next time on the Network Plus Study Group. So let's do some housekeeping. Speaking of Network Plus Study Group people, there we go, coming back. So for those of you that were asking about some of the other things, you were asking about, are you required to watch the study groups live to get the CEU credit, or can you watch the replays? You can watch the replays. You can go back a year and watch all of them. Now, you can only use so many of those CEUs to apply towards your renewal. A lot of people these days are probably not doing study groups or using CEUs from study groups to renew. They're probably using something like CertMaster CE, or they're perhaps getting a higher level certification. But some people still collect those CEUs, which I think is useful too. So make sure that either way works for me. I don't care. But if you have not gotten, or you do not have a CompTIA certification yet, then all of the CEU talk means nothing to you. You have no idea what we're talking about, which is okay because you can't use them until you get certified anyway. But the continuing education unit is a credit that you can apply towards renewing your certification. So that is a 1 hour credit that you can put in your big pile of credits that you turn in every 3 years to keep your certification valid, because nobody wants to have their certification expire. Nobody wants to have to take this exam again. In fact, you probably won't. Once you pass the exam, just keep renewing it every 3 years and you never have to take this exam again. So that's the best way to do this. That way you're always up to date with the latest technology, but you don't have to restart the process already from the very beginning and making that happen. So in the chat room, let's go through some of the questions. There was a question a lot earlier on being able to determine whether you should be taking the Network Plus or the CCNA from Cisco, the Cisco Certified Network Administrator. So those are two very different exams. If you've ever gone through those two certifications, you know they are completely different. The CCNA is not an entry-level cert. CCNA is a certification really designed for somebody who has some experience in networking, and they really want to become experts in understanding how to configure a Cisco switch, how to configure a Cisco router, and understanding all the technology surrounding those. That's what a CCNA is focused on. That means you're doing a lot of hands-on, you're doing a lot of troubleshooting, you're doing a lot of typing at the command line. It's a very advanced, I wouldn't say very advanced, but it's a more advanced certification than Network Plus. Network Plus is a good primer before you take your CCNA. So when you step into the CCNA, if you didn't go through Network Plus, you wouldn't have any knowledge of Ethernet, cabling, protocols, spanning tree, what ping does, how traceroute works. You would have to learn all of that in your CCNA studies, which some people do. Some people say, I'll just learn it all at one time. It will take me longer to do my CCNA, but I don't want to have to go through the Network Plus because I know I want to manage switches and routers. That's a completely reasonable approach. Other people feel they would like a primer first. They would like to go through the Network Plus because maybe they're working on just getting that entry-level job into IT. Network Plus fits very well with that. Ultimately, the right answer about which one you take is based on what employers are asking for. So it doesn't matter what I say. Ultimately, you need to figure out what employers would like you to have, then go get that one. That's really the right answer. It's kind of, I feel like I'm in some ways dodging the question, but that's really the right answer. Why would you take the CCNA if all the employers want Network Plus? Why would you take Network Plus if all your people employing people want a CCNA? So find out. Each area is different. Each geography is different. Each company is a little bit different. You're going to have to do a little bit of research. You're going to have to do a little recon and find out what the companies in your area are asking for. Maybe do a quick survey of what they're asking for, figure it out. And at the end of the survey, you see 7 employers want Network Plus, 3 employers want CCNA. Okay, twice as many people want Network Plus. Let's go get that one. Maybe that's how you make the decision. I don't know. Only you're going to know to be able to figure that out. So that's why I say there's no right answer or wrong answer there. It just depends on what you're doing and what employers are looking for. I think that's the real case. And being able to work through those. Other questions. This one revolves around this difference between the N10-007 or N10-008. And the question is, which one do you go with? Do you study right now for the 007 or do you study right now for the 008? Now, as we sit here in November of 2021, there are many more study materials available for the N10-007. There's many more books. There's many more videos. There's many more practice questions. There's many more labs. There's many more of everything for the 007 because the 008 hasn't even been out 2 months yet. It's brand new. So there are a limited number of study materials available for the 008. So if you're playing the odds and trying to pick the one that will be the easiest path to success, right now the 007 is your easiest path to success. And you have plenty of time because it is retiring in June, at the end of June. So you've got plenty of time to study for the 007. Now, I realize some people don't like taking the older exams. They are in their DNA, they hate taking the older exams for some reason. They must take the newer exam. I've talked to these people, I know. And I tell them, well, you know, there's a lot more available for the 007. I don't care. I'm going to take the 008. I can't take those old exams. I must take the new one. And if you're one of those folks, then you can find some of the materials that are available for the 008 and take that exam. Will you be working at a disadvantage? Yes, you will. But that was your choice because you felt that you couldn't take the 007. Now, whether you pass your 007 or whether you pass your 008, you earn exactly the same certification. Certifications don't say Network Plus 007 or Network Plus 008. They just say Network Plus. And as I mentioned, if you're somebody who earned your Network Plus 10 years ago and you've simply been renewing it all this time, you might have taken the N10-004 or 005. Employers don't care which exam you take. All they care about is that you passed the exam. So your 007 earns you a Network Plus certification that is just as strong, just as valid, and just as desired by employers as someone who took their 008. So you've got some options there. You've got things that you can work through. Employers, and I wouldn't even say the average employer, I haven't found an employer yet who really differentiates between the 007 or 008. The only time I have found an employer who really cared is an employer that was hiring instructors for the 008, which, by the way, doesn't count. If you're hiring an instructor, of course you want them to be knowledgeable on the latest exam. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about someone just trying to get a networking job. Employers don't care. They do not care about that. So other question in the chat room, when looking over the exam objectives on 008, why didn't they put this in the 008? Because it's in the Security Plus, or why didn't they add this thing? I don't know. I don't have any insight into the process. I'm not involved in the process of building these exams out intentionally. I do not want to be involved in building out these exams. I want them to hand me these exam objectives once they are done. There are plenty of topics on the exam. I'm going to bring up the set of topics on my side, so you're going to see me typing here. I'm not being rude. I want to give you some statistics about the 008 exam and the objectives. So in the 007, if you counted the number of objectives in the CompTIA exam objectives, you went through and you counted every single one. Yes, I have done this. There are 499 objectives as I count them. Now, you might come up with one or two, or either way. You might have plus or minus on that side, but let's just say 500, big round number. 500 objectives on the 007. On the 008, there's 588 objectives. So it's slightly bigger, 88 more objectives on the 008, which might lead us to believe or understand why they may not want to add even more things to the exam, especially if those topics are going to be covered in Security Plus. So I can see why they might decide certain things go into the exam, certain things don't go into the exam. It was already getting bigger. And on top of that, of those 588 topics on the 008, 235 of them are new from the 007. That's 40% of the exam. 40% of the exam is brand new content. That's a lot of new content for an exam. Whenever they update A+, it's usually about 25%. Although I've talked about Security Plus before, half of that exam is brand new. And it's a much bigger exam. It's 1.5 times larger. So it's really even more than half. Just a lot. 40% is a large number of differences in exam objectives. Now, what's interesting about that 40%, if I look at the exam objectives, it's not like there were wholesale changes in the exam. There are some sections like the networked device section that talks about Internet of Things and talks about devices you would plug into the network. That's brand new in this exam. But almost all of these new topics are part of the old set of topics with new things added to it. So for example, we'll take an example that makes sense. On the cellular standards video, 5G is included this time through. Okay, well, it still talks about CDMA and GSM and LTE and 3G and 4G, just like the N10-007, but now they've added in 5G. So there's an example of them adding more to the exam, but it's not like it's a brand new set of topics. You're just adding on to what's there. Now, when you get into other things like logs and monitoring, that's all brand new in this exam. There's a lot of new security in this exam, but everything else like network hardening, social engineering, wireless security, remote access is almost the same as the 007, except they added more stuff. So I can't point to any particular thing or section of the exam as being dramatically changed. It's just they really swapped out a lot of things and kind of swapped them in. They sort of intermixed them along with everything else. So they did a great job at updating topics. That updating of topics is 40% of the exam. So a lot that's there. The N10-007 is not scheduled to retire until the end of June. So you have 7+ months at this point to pass that exam. That's a huge amount of time. Usually on average, it takes people about 2 to 3 months. 7 months is a long time to study. You should, I won't say anybody, but almost all of us should be able to pass this exam in 7 months. Not an issue. So there you go. Carl in the chat room with the $10 super chat. Thank you, Carl, first for that. We appreciate your support. And we can now keep the lights on thanks to Carl. And Carl puts in his message, I took your advice and took the 007 last week and not the 008. Passed it with much less worry. That's the objective, right? Thank you for all the help. You're absolutely welcome. I feel like we didn't do much because I didn't even know you were taking the exam. I feel like you did all the hard work because you did. Well done on passing your 007. Congratulations on your Network Plus exam and your certification. That's a good one to have in your pocket. So I know that's got to feel good. And by the way, you have exactly the same certification as somebody who took the 008 exam. Certainly more things available. Now, this whole idea of deciding which one to take, you're really, as we get closer to June, you'll find the story changing. There will be a lot more materials on the market. We're getting close to June. You know, by the time we get into the March, April timeframe, that's getting close. You may not want to take the 007, but I will tell you there will be people taking the 007 exam on the last day of June. On June 30th, there will be people taking the 007. So don't feel like you're the only one doing this. It's just sort of human nature, I think. We kind of wait until the last minute. You've been studying 007 all this time. Well, okay, let's see if we can get this thing passed at the last minute. Just kind of the way it works. So I think you will start to see me changing that tune in the April-May timeframe because there will be plenty of materials out, maybe even before that. Because quite honestly, by the time we get to January, February, almost all the books should be out, I would think. I would have to check around that time frame. But about that time frame, I think, is probably one where I could tell people, take whatever you'd like. If you've been studying for 007, take 007. If you're starting right now, sure, go take 007 or 8. Doesn't matter. But if you're going to plan at that point, if you're going to make a decision, you might as well go 8. I hate having a deadline. Some people are motivated by deadlines. Some people feel like that's going to make me work harder to meet that deadline. I work in reverse. Things are on fire. I'm running around. Oh, it's a deadline. I'm never going to make it. There's anxiety. So everybody works differently with pressure. So sometimes that pressure squashes you flat. Sometimes the pressure makes a diamond. It just depends on how you handle pressure. And I'm not one of those people that likes being pressured. I got enough going on in my world that I really don't want to have to deal with that. So I tell people, find the one that is the best path for you, and you'll be good. For those of you here, we're in the chat. We're in the after show. I'm taking questions from the chat room. You can put any questions you would like about anything. Doesn't have to be about Network Plus. Simply visit the chat room at professormesser.com/live or use the YouTube chat if you're watching this live on the YouTube side. Whenever I start looking at the Cisco versus Network Plus, these questions start coming up about, well, what about other certifications? And that's one that came up earlier, which was, why don't I do ITF Plus? Why don't I do a Cisco CCNA? Why don't I do all these other things? And I'd love to. It's really more about hours in the day than anything else. Right now, of course, we're finishing up the Network Plus. Right after I finish doing that last video, we cycle into writing some Q&A, I hope. That's my plan. May not work out that way, but that's the plan today. And then, of course, at the beginning of the year, A+ will be updated. So I'll have A+ to be able to roll into. There'll be a bunch of A+ videos. And then when those are done, maybe I can. Maybe there will be one that we can work through. We'll have to see and see what that is. In the chat room, Cody asks, can you explain PVID briefly? It's kind of a Cisco term. I think Cisco uses that term the most. I don't know that it's in the 007 or 008. I don't know that they use that. When it is a private VLAN identifier, PVID is what that stands for. The PVID, if you are setting up a switch for the very first time, you have to tell every interface. You have to tell the switch, interface 1 is on VLAN 7. Interface 2 is also on VLAN 7. Interface 3 is on VLAN 20. Interface 4 is on VLAN 88. So you configure each physical interface or virtual interface on the switch to be a particular VLAN. To when people plug in, what VLAN are they going to be on? That's what that is. And you will see that referenced in the configuration of the switch as a PVID, the private VLAN ID. Why they just don't call it the VLAN ID, I don't know. I used to do a lot with Palo Alto Networks firewalls. We just call it the VLAN ID for that interface. Why make it more difficult than it happens to be? But this is Cisco we're talking about. If it wasn't difficult, it wouldn't be a Cisco. We needed PVID. It's an abbreviation. It's one of those things where the developers called it that. Therefore, that's what it's called in the GUI. That's what it's called in the CLI. That's what it's called in the documentations. Now that's what it's called, is the PVID. Not something I think that's in the exam objectives, is it? I have not looked into the exam objectives to see that. I don't recall it coming up anywhere as PVID. Although if I show a screenshot of my switch that I use here, it's a Cisco switch, and it lists out the PVIDs. So that's probably where you may have seen it, is on some of the screenshots on my videos, especially the ones that talk about VLANs. I think that's one of those that just depends on if it's in the exam objectives or not, then you should know it or not. From my perspective, and this comes up quite a bit during the week, is people will go to other sites on the internet, or they will have different books or different materials, and they'll come to me and say, this book says that I should know this topic, but that topic is not listed in the exam objectives. So should I really know it? My default answer is no, you shouldn't. I mean, eventually you probably will have to know things outside of the exam objectives. I get it. But our goal here is for you to pass this exam. There's already enough you need to know. For the N10-007, we know that there are 499 things you need to know. Why would you add other things on that weren't specifically in that list of 499 things? The argument people will make, and I've seen this as well, they say, well, eventually you need to know it. To do your job, you're going to run into this. Out in the world, you may find this. Well, that's absolutely true. Absolutely true. but I'm not creating videos so that you can learn things that you will be doing out in the world. I mean, I am, but I'm really focusing on you passing this exam. That's the purpose for the videos, is passing the exam. So why would you focus? Why would you not focus on the exam objectives? Why would you not limit yourself only to the exam objectives? That's the only thing that CompTIA wants you to know. So why would you go outside the scope of this? It doesn't make a lot of sense. That's why I tell people, just ignore them. If somebody goes outside the scope of the exam objectives, just ignore it. Don't worry about it. Focus on the exam objectives, because ultimately, if you know everything that is listed in the CompTIA exam objectives, you're going to do fine on your exam. That's the bottom line. And there is, trust me, a career full of things you will be learning that are outside the scope of the CompTIA exam objectives. CompTIA exam objectives were never intended to be a be-all, end-all of networking. They are only designed to tell you what you can be asked on the exam. So that's why I tell you, make sure you stick to that list. If you find anything that goes outside of that list, ignore it. This is kind of what happens when these things happen. Let's say there was an N10-004 exam, a 5, a 6. So there have been many Network Plus exams prior to this one. Obviously, there have been many changes to the exam objectives through the years. Unfortunately, some content creators on the internet and elsewhere don't remove those things from their list, and they keep asking you old material. That's really where these things come from. So if you ever see something that's outside the scope, you may want to go look at the 006 or 005 or 004 exam objectives. You might find it. You might find that there. That's probably where it comes from, is those pieces. And as a follow-up to that PVID, Cody says, I've gone through all the 007, never came across it. I've been dealing with it in this SCADA network that you have to be taking over. Yep, you probably do have. You're going to be running across a number of unique and challenging things if you are managing that type of network anyway. So I think that's one where you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to figure this out. PVID, in fact, it's kind of hard to find the definition of these things outside the scope, but PVID is one you can pretty much decide, yep, that's your private VLAN ID. That's just the name of the VLAN, the number of the VLAN associated with an interface on a switch. That is the idea. Let's do another question. I'm slightly torn between a career in traditional network engineering versus cybersecurity. Any thoughts on this? Yes. My thought offhand is that it is unusual to find a job on the IT security side, or what the industry tends to call cybersecurity. It's unusual to find a cybersecurity job that doesn't want you to be an expert in networking. You really do need to be very knowledgeable on the network side to be able to do anything on the IT security side, because a huge chunk of IT security is about networking. So I'll give you an example of this. If we look at some of the things a traditional IT security professional has to do, they have to install a firewall, but it's not going to be one firewall. It's going to be two firewalls because you need redundancy. Are you going to configure them as active-active or active-passive? Depending on which you do, you will need to make sure you've configured some gratuitous ARPs. Depending on which one you choose, you may have to integrate it into an existing virtual or dynamic switching and routing protocol configuration, depending on what you're doing in your environment. So you've got two routers, two firewalls, two switches. How do you make them all work together? How do you avoid any type of asymmetric routing between those? And then how do you get them into the network in a way that the routing and the switching continues to operate normally? Are you going to go in at layer 3? Are you going to go in at layer 2? Are you going to go in at layer 1? You've got different options for that. All of those questions were all networking questions. They had nothing to do with the firewall functionality. That's another thing you have to worry about after you get it plugged in, is now I got to figure the firewall out. first thing you got to do is engineer it into the network. Same thing applies. Let's look at a IPsec tunnel. You're connecting to a third party or maybe a remote site over IPsec. You need to make sure that you've got a separate routing mechanism. If it's a route-based IPsec VPN, then we have to worry about routing because information going over the IPsec tunnel will be sent there because of the routes that you've set up. So you need to make sure you have the right subnetting set up and the right routes to have that. Do I have a static route to it? How do I get to that route from other parts of my network? When it gets to that remote site, we need routes to come the other way. So that's one way to set up an IPsec tunnel. It might be policy-based. Your firewall may not use routes to send traffic over the IPsec tunnel. It may make decisions on what it sends over that IPsec tunnel based on policies that you would install in the firewall, which add a whole nother set of complexity to getting this run. But again, now we're sort of blending together the network and the security piece. So that's why I tell people, if you want to have the best chance of getting into IT security / cyber security, whatever the industry calls it, then you need to have a good foundation of operating systems. And I mean Windows, Linux, Mac OS, ideally. You need to at least have some knowledge of how things work across the network with your mobile devices, tablets, and phones. You need to understand networking like a pro. I don't mean that you need to be a complete 100% expert in all things networking, but you need to be pretty knowledgeable enough in networking that you're designing networks. And you're designing networks with a knowledge on why you are designing it that way. The advantages and disadvantages from designing a network and where you put different equipment and how you would make them all work together. Once you finally have the operating system and the networking piece, then you can layer on the security side. And only at that point are you really going to be moving into IT security. So I tell people this really is not an either or. In fact, I feel sometimes I want to tell people this story when they have no IT experience whatsoever. They want to get into IT. They don't even have an IT job yet, but they're taking a cybersecurity course. And I think that's great because that's good information to know. You will use that information at some point in your career. But I don't know that that gets you a job in IT because you need an entry-level position before you can learn about operating systems and manage those, before you can learn about the network, and then finally get into the security side. So I'm recommending that when you decide which direction you go, that you're picking the direction based on what employers want to see of you. Now, if you are in the Washington, D.C. area, you're in the United States, you're working in Virginia, Maryland, D.C., you will find that almost all of the employers in that area want you to have Security Plus. So, of course, you would take Security Plus first because all the employers require you to have Security Plus. It's one of the mandates brought on by the federal government, specifically the Department of Defense, and it's kind of spread itself out to be pretty much anything in the U.S. federal government. So, of course, that's what you want. The federal government doesn't care if you have Network Plus. They don't care if you have A+. They want you to have Security Plus. Does that make sense? That wasn't the question. The question was, what does the employer want you to have? That's what you should go get. Now, if you are in Miami and you're looking at job postings, you may find that none of them are asking for Security Plus, or very few. Maybe all of them are asking for A+. Maybe all of them are asking for a Microsoft certification. Maybe all would like Red Hat. I don't know. But everywhere you go, the geographies are very different, and what employers are asking for is very different depending on where you are. So my answer to people when they say, what do I get? What should I take? What do you recommend? I don't recommend anything. Well, here's what I recommend. I recommend you sit down, go to your favorite job posting website, go to Indeed, go to Dice, go to LinkedIn Learning or LinkedIn Jobs, go to those sites, look at all the job postings that are available in your area that match the skills you have. If you're looking for a help desk job, look at all the help desk positions. If you're looking for a network administrator, look at all the network administrator positions and then start documenting it all out. Create a spreadsheet for every job. What formal education are they looking for, if any? What knowledge of technology are they looking for, if any? Are they listing any operating systems? Are they listing any networking components? Are they listing any security devices? Do I need to know? Did they list anything in there? Make a note of those. Are they looking for certifications? What certifications are they looking for? So you should have a list of every job in your area. Maybe it's 10, maybe it's 20, maybe it's 50, and you should be able to see a trend. You should be able to see, oh, everybody seems to be asking about Linux, or everybody seems to be asking about Azure, or everybody seems to be asking about Network Plus. And that should help you focus your efforts on what direction you go. There is not a single right answer. There is only a best case that you could put together depending on what you want to do and what employers are looking for in your area. So I wish I could say, here is the one certification that will solve all your problems. If you do nothing else, you should have this one cert. That doesn't exist. I should make a YouTube video with that title just to hook people in and then make them angry when I tell them, guess what? It doesn't matter what I think. Doesn't matter what anybody thinks. Only matters what you're planning to do and what employers are looking for. That's the only thing that matters. I'm assuming that the objective here is to get a job or get a better job. That's not the only reason people get certifications, but I think it's the vast majority of people getting certifications. That's what they're focusing on, and that's where I'm coming from with that answer. Now, if you're just trying to better yourself, you're just trying to learn more about the technology, you're just trying to become more well-rounded, that's different. We don't have to worry so much about that. Do what you'd like to do. Follow the technology you think is most interesting. That makes sense to me. So that's where I think most people get maybe trapped or confused or redirected, is other people will tell them, oh, you're studying A+? Why are you doing that? You should be studying Security+. You should be getting your cybersecurity degree. Well, why? Are any employers asking for a cybersecurity degree? Maybe, or maybe not. So you need to decide which direction is best based on you, not based on what anybody else has to say. I've read through the Reddit subreddits for CompTIA, for Cisco, for Microsoft, for IT certifications, for system administration. There is a lot of great recommendations in those subreddits. There's a lot of awful recommendations in those subreddits that come from people that are in the industry. They have a high-level job, and they just hand out bad advice like it's candy. The best advice is you deciding what you want to do and then matching that with an employer and find out what the employer would like. Now, I will tell you that employers will put a lot of things on a job posting. And if you were to read through some of these job postings, they ask for a ridiculous amount of things sometimes. So they ask for you need a master's degree in nuclear fission. You need experience working with 100 gig networks. You need 10 years of experience working with 100 gig networks. You know, there's just crazy things that show up. It's sort of by committee. And they write a bunch of things down. They put it on a piece of paper and they go, we're going to get the best possible person now. Don't worry about the details. If it's a job that is a help desk position and you meet 80 to 90% of what's on that sheet of paper, send in your resume. Don't worry about them and what you think they're going to do. In fact, don't dismiss yourself or cancel yourself out of a position because you think you don't fit. If you're reading the job description and the bulk of it kind of fits what you do, send it in. Let them be the one to say, not the best fit. Because what you're going to find is in these crazy job postings is they're not going to either get a lot of people sending in their job resumes, or they may find that they just don't get particular parts of that covered, and they get 80% of it covered, and they're fine with that. So that's why I tell people, don't worry so much about what you think. Just send it in. They will say no if it doesn't work. I think a lot of people are worried about sending their resume in. They might reject it. Yeah, they might. Just get used to it. If you're in this industry and you're not used to rejection yet, it's coming. You'll figure it out. It gets to a point where people just say no, and you're like, okay, I'll just head to the next one. Thanks for letting me know. So that's one of those cases. XM in the chat room with a $5 super chat. XM says, ended up getting my Network Plus last month. Congratulations on that. Thanks for all your help, Professor. I didn't do anything. You did all the hard work. You did all the heavy lifting. Congratulations on that. Glad we could help that little tiny bit to get you there. It's the reason we have the videos. It's the reason we do these study groups, is to get you down that road and make sure that you have that there. Well, that's true. In the chat room, some other folks are mentioning they don't always let you know if you don't meet the requirements. No, they don't. Trust me, if they've ghosted you, you know what the answer is. I'm not sure why that's a question. For those of you that have been in that perspective, I sent them a text, I sent them an email, I just never heard back. Well, guess what? They aren't going to hire you. I hate to be the one who tells you this. Go to the next one. In fact, if you don't have 10 or 20 or 100 resumes out, if you don't have the applications just blanketed in your area, you're not doing it right. Send them to everybody. You get an application, and you get an application, and just spread them everywhere. You know, one of those is going to hit. And eventually you'll start getting better at this. You'll get better at least the first job. You really have to just spray it out there and hope that somebody is going to pick it up. But once you get into that first job, you start collecting your LinkedIn connections. You start making friends in the industry. You go to some Microsoft user groups. You start learning more about the Cisco side. You start going down that road of building your group of people that you have worked with, so that the next time you're looking for a job, you can just ping one of those folks on LinkedIn and they help you out. So that's the real key in the industry, is building. We used to call it building your Rolodex. I still call it building your Rolodex, but that's what it is. You're building your contact list. And these days, for better or worse, LinkedIn is that professional Rolodex. So make sure you take advantage of that and start building it. It's almost like a side quest. I know that you're working towards this job. I know that you're in the industry. I know you're working to get your next set of certifications or whatever it may be. But on the other side of this, at the same time, you need to always keep collecting that group of people, be knowledgeable of what they're doing. This is a very small industry. I know it's a lot of companies and a lot of people. What you'll find is you start seeing the people over and over and over again. I used to go into different places. I used to go meet different customers every day. I was assistant engineer for a manufacturer, so I would go to a customer's site and have meetings with them. We do 2, 3, 4 meetings a day. And sometimes you walk into one customer and there's somebody you knew from a different company, but they quit there 6 months ago and now they work at this company. So all the time you're running into people you know. Oh, I didn't know you were here. What are you doing here? Oh, you're doing this now. Got it. And then there's a whole conversation before you even start the meeting about how are things. Last time I saw you, we were doing this. How'd your implementation go with that thing? What are you doing now? Oh, you're doing a similar thing. There's so many great jobs that works that way, that people will move between those jobs. And we know we keep a tight group, a tight control and knowledge on what people are doing in our LinkedIn. So we can see when people are moving around and what's happening with them. And it's remarkable. I even see when I rarely log into my LinkedIn to do that type of networking these days. I'm really heads down at creating my videos, but I do go on LinkedIn. I add to the Professor Messer LinkedIn page. I make sure that you can see when the next live events will be. I add some event calendar entries. I do some things on there, and then I'll check my feed from time to time, and I get to see, well, my friends are doing, oh, they're still there. Oh, they just made a move. Oh, they just added some information. Oh, here's what's going on with them. Great to keep up with those. And you will be using those connections. I won't say using, but keeping up with people, knowing what they're doing and keeping track of what people are doing in their lives. You'll be doing it the rest of your career, maybe the rest of your life. I've been in IT for years. And as I have added to my LinkedIn and keep track of people, it's remarkable where we've all gone and what we've done. But I still remember working with them. We can still communicate over LinkedIn, which sometimes is useful too, because you may be at a company and there's some openings. And you think, who would be good for this? That person I knew. So you can reach out to them and go, hey, are you looking for a job doing this? And see what they think. It's a great way just to kind of keep the conversation open and keep people sending information back and forth. This is the After Show. We're taking questions from the chat room. You can submit questions by going to professormesser.com/live or simply put them into the YouTube chat if that's where you happen to be. The question in the chat room, I left Facebook and Twitter a few years ago. You're not on LinkedIn. Should I start rebuilding a new social presence? I really don't want to, but I got to play their game, I guess. Well, it's not really their game. It's really about you and what you want to do with your career. LinkedIn is definitely not Facebook. LinkedIn is definitely not Twitter. It is a professional place you go to keep track of everyone that you work with. So if you've already been in the industry a while, you can send out a bunch of LinkedIn requests and get some people started, get some conversations going, just keep track of what people are doing. It's a very valuable tool. Now I realize there's upsells there. They're trying to get you on the LinkedIn Pro or whatever they call it, or they're trying to, sometimes you have to deal with other people, third parties, just sending you spam, recruiters and other things. But that's not exactly a bad thing. If you're on LinkedIn, you are ostensibly going to be looking for a job at some point to move into. So if that's the case, then LinkedIn's a great place to be, and you can kind of keep track of some of the recruiters over time. There was in my career, it was probably 2 or 3 recruiters that I worked with just constantly, over a long period of time. I still have their name and their numbers somewhere that I would talk to. So anytime I was in a job and I just wasn't happy with what was going, I'd send them a resume and say, let me know if there's anything on your radar. Just keep me in mind for this. In the chat room, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I realize on the internet that there are a lot of bad practice exams. And I know this because I get every bad question emailed to me constantly. My recommendation is if you see a question on another site and you feel like that answer is not accurate, the first thing I'll tell you is you're probably correct. So just ignore that one. There's some bad questions out there in the world. Just ignore it and keep it going. And my other recommendation is if you are concerned about that answer and you don't think it's quite right, I recommend you contact the author of the question. I can't do anything. And I say this because there are so many bad questions on the internet that I could spend all of my time responding to people who find the same bad questions over and over and over again. I could almost create a wiki of here's the bad answers list, but it would just be so big and would be so massive and would take so much of my time that it wouldn't be worth it. So if it's my question, if I wrote it and you think it's wrong, tell me. Maybe I did get it wrong. Maybe I did write it wrong. Maybe it should be clearer. There's absolutely places where maybe I could make a question better and I can rewrite the question. But I have access to the question. I can do that. I can update the book. I can update the website, and we can make it so that it's really clear because I want the questions to be very specific. And on your exam, I will tell you the questions are very specific. You're not going to have questions on the exam where it could be one or the other. Those don't exist on the exam. If you know your stuff, the right answers will be very, very obvious. You won't have a lot of that. So I think that's where you really do run into these problems. And do people get them wrong? Sometimes we do. We're human. We try to write the best questions we can. Some people write better questions than others. Some places have better exams than others. I get it. But that's at least one of those situations where go back to the person that wrote it. Give them a chance. Now, one of the things that concerns me is that some people will present me with a bad question, and I'll say, you really should go take this back to the author. And they go, I did. And the author doubled down and said, no, it really is correct, when obviously it was wrong. I can't help that. All I can really do is say, well, I think you're right. Whatever, I don't know why they feel that that's the right answer, but, I can't help you with that one. Maybe find another set of questions from someone who really knows what they're doing. That's all I can really say. Another question in the chat room. When's the next Security Plus study group? It's next week. Normally we do these on a Wednesday as we sit here doing this live. The questions that we work through and the things that we do in these study groups, I try to have on certain days and certain times. Doesn't always work that way. For example, next week we had planned to do this a week from today with Security Plus study group. It was on a Wednesday. It's going to be on Thursday now because things happen in my world. Sometimes I'm just not able to move things around in the rest of my life, and I'm locked into something. So you'll find that I have to always make some changes a month out, weeks out, sometimes days away. The best way to know when an event is going to be is to check the calendar. I always update the calendar on my website first thing. Whenever anything changes, that is the first thing I change. So if you go to professormesser.com/calendar, or you choose the calendar link at the top of the page, that takes you to the calendar. That is always up to date, second by second. So if we finish this study group and Mrs. Professor Messer walks in, he goes, guess what? We can't do it Thursday because we got this thing and I can't move it. I'm like, okay, we're doing it Friday. I'll go in, I'll move it to wherever the new day is, maybe a week later, maybe a day later, whatever it happens to be, but it's moved immediately. You know when it is. Now, right now, I feel like Thursday of next week is pretty solid. Thursday of next week currently looks really, really good. So that's when we're planning the next Security Plus study group is Thursday of next week, 12 noon Eastern. Works well that way. The challenge is really finding the right time and date for everybody, and there isn't one. So I kind of do these during the week. I do them at about noon Eastern time usually. That seems to work out the best for the vast majority of us. Now, for those of you that go back for years with us, prior to doing this full time, I would do the study groups on the weekend because I would have the normal job. I say normal job, the abnormal job during the week, the craziness of one job during the week. And then on the nights and weekends is when I would do this. So this has not been a full-time thing always. We've been doing this almost 15, 20 years now. Yeah, that's about right. But only in the last number of years has it been a full-time thing. So we've just gone to doing them during the week. And I realize some of you feel like we should be doing them at night. We should be doing them on the weekend. You're not wrong. You're absolutely right. But I kind of have to fit this in to make it work best for everybody, including myself. I got to a point where I kind of wanted the weekends for me to shoot more video and do more things. So this kind of frees up the weekends a little bit, but it does tend to change. And maybe it changes so that I have to do it on a weekend sometime. That happens. Just go to the calendar. It will tell you always on the calendar what happens to be the best possible time and date. And if you have recommendations, suggestions, ideas, or something you just want an answer to quickly, I'm in the Discord all the time. So if you want to hit our Discord server, that's a great place to chat with people. There's always a conversation going on there. Sometimes people are going over questions in the study rooms. They're live streaming. There's plenty of things to do there. You can find that at professormesser.com/Discord. It's a great place to talk to people, get their perspective. Obviously, we can't put copyrighted information in there. We can't really talk about what we got on our exams because everyone signs a candidate agreement, a non-disclosure agreement. But we can talk about exam objectives, questions of the day, my pop quiz questions, study groups like this, plenty that's there. So lots to do in those study groups and in the Discord. I think it's a good place to go as well. Well, that brings us to the end of another hour of Q&A. Can you believe it? We made it through our Network Plus study group, everybody. The very first N10-008 study group. We're so glad we were able to make that transition. And going forward, these will continue to be the N10-008. We'd love for you to come back next week. We got our Security Plus study group on Thursday of next week. Stop back in. Always check the calendar when the next event is going to be at professormesser.com/calendar. In the meantime, we've got plenty of resources on the Professor Messer website. If you are here for the Network Plus, we're finishing up those videos. There's about 20 more videos coming out. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell so you know the minute I upload those brand new videos for the N10-008. If you like this video, make sure you hit the thumbs up. It really does help us. Goes a long way. And on behalf of all content creators, we thank you for doing that. It really is something that YouTube looks for. And now that we have our own YouTube representative, it's nice to be able to have that conversation with them. So we have people to talk to directly at YouTube, thanks to you. And we really could not have done that without you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for the study group. Thanks for your time in the first hour. Thanks for your questions in the after show. We love doing these. We can't wait to see you next week. Come on back for the Security Plus study group, and we'll see you next time on the Network Plus study group. Thanks, everyone.